So, the European Union is making this enormous, high-stakes bet on its green future. And the technology at the heart of it all? It's not some giant solar farm or a massive wind turbine, but something much, much closer to home, the heat pump. In this explainer, we're going to break down why this little device is so critical and the immense challenges it's up against.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The core question Europe is wrestling with. It's a big one. You've got a continent with millions of buildings. A lot of them are old, not very efficient, and the huge majority of them are heated by burning fossil fuels, like natural gas. So how on earth do you switch all of that over to something clean, secure, and, affordable? The scale of this is just massive.
Well, the leading answer might be a piece of tech you're already very familiar with. Just think about the refrigerator in your kitchen. It works by pulling heat from the inside to keep your food cold, right? And it dumps that warm air out the back. Now, just imagine flipping that entire process around. That's a heat pump. It pulls warmth that already exists in the outside air, even on a cold day, and moves it inside your house.
So to really get why this is such a huge deal, we have to understand the sheer scale of the challenge Europe's up against. It's not just one thing driving this. It's a whole bunch of policy, security, and environmental pressures all coming to a head at once.
You see, for the EU, this isn't just a nice to have. It's become an absolute necessity. First, you've got the European Green Deal, which legally requires decarbonization. Second, there's the REPowerEU plan. That was launched right after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it created this incredibly urgent need for energy security. Third, burning fuel for heat just creates a lot of local air pollution. And finally, get this, a staggering 75% of buildings in the EU are energy inefficient. That makes heating one of the biggest single energy drains on the entire continent.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's urgent, it's massive. Now let's talk about the solution on the table. What exactly is a heat pump, and how does this whole reverse fridge idea actually work?
At its heart, a heat pump is a heat mover, not a heat creator. It's not burning anything to create warmth. Nope, it's way cleverer than that. It uses a really neat thermodynamic cycle to grab existing heat from the outside world, concentrate it, and then move it inside where you want it.
And how it works is actually pretty cool. It's all about this special liquid called a refrigerant. So first, this super cold liquid flows through an outdoor unit and just soaks up heat from the air. Then a compressor, and this is the part that uses electricity, squeezes that refrigerant, which makes its temperature shoot way up. Third, that super hot liquid flows inside and releases all its heat into your home. And finally, it cools back down and the whole cycle just starts over again.
And this is why heat pumps are a total game changer. Because they're just moving heat around instead of creating it from scratch, they're incredibly efficient. We're talking around 300% efficient. For every 1 kilowatt of electricity you put in, you get about 3 kilowatts of heat out. Compare that to even a brand new gas boiler, you're always losing energy, it's always less than 100% efficient. It's just no contest.
So with the technology this good, you'd think the story would be just straight up, right? Smooth sailing. But nope. The reality for the European heat pump market has been anything but smooth. It's been a total roller coaster.
Let's just look at the numbers, because they really tell the story. Sales were growing nice and steady for years. Then, bam, 2022 happens and sales just explode, hitting 2.8 million units. But then, almost as quickly, they drop back down to 2 million. Now, the long-term trend is still up, don't get me wrong, but that recent dip has caused some major headaches for the industry.
So what caused this whiplash? Well, it's pretty simple actually, the gas crisis. Back in 2022, gas prices were skyrocketing, so the financial reason to switch to a heat pump was huge. But as those gas prices came back down to earth and government policies started to seem a little less certain, that sense of urgency just evaporated for a lot of people, and sales cooled right off with it.
And this is where that slowdown becomes a really big problem, because the EU's official goal, it's not small. We're talking about installing 30 million new heat pumps by 2030. 30 million. You put that number next to the recent sales dip, and suddenly you see just how steep the climb ahead really is.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit. Where does Europe stand on the world stage when it comes to this tech? Well, the EU is a manufacturing heavyweight for sure, but it's also at a really tricky crossroads, facing some pretty intense competition.
This chart really lays out the global playing field. China is the clear leader here, with about a third of the market. And then you have the EU and the US, basically neck and neck for second place. It's a strong position for Europe, absolutely, But dominant? Not by a long shot.
And we're not just talking about machines here. The economic stakes are huge. This sector supports almost 500,000 jobs across the EU, and that number has more than doubled since 2017. This isn't just about climate, it's a massive industrial strategy with hundreds of thousands of livelihoods on the line.
So this puts the EU in a bit of a strategic pickle. On one hand, you've got real strengths, especially with the water-based systems that are common in European homes. But, and this is a big but, there's a major weakness. It relies on Asia for critical parts like compressors, which are the real heart of the machine. The opportunity? To be a leader in new tech. The threat? All those factories that ramped up for the boom are now sitting with expensive, empty space. And that makes them vulnerable.
Which brings us to the big question, the one that really matters. What's next? What are the biggest roadblocks standing between today's market and that massive 2030 goal?
Well, for anyone thinking about this for their own home, it usually comes down to this one big dilemma, the upfront cost. It's way higher than just getting a new gas boiler. People get sticker shock. Now, the idea is you save money on running costs over time, but that initial hurdle, it's a big one.
And whether you actually save money on those running costs, well, that pretty much comes down to a single all-important number, the electricity to gas price ratio. Basically, how much more expensive is a unit of energy from electricity compared to a unit from gas?
And this chart, wow, it shows the problem perfectly. You look at a country like Sweden, where electricity is cheap, the ratio is low. Getting a heat pump is a financial no-brainer. But then you go to Belgium, where electricity is nearly 4 times the price of gas, and that amazing 3-to-1 efficiency we talked about, it gets totally wiped out. In fact, it can be more expensive to run. A lot of countries are stuck somewhere in that tricky middle ground.
And it's not just about cost. There are a few other major hurdles. First, the skills gap. There just aren't enough trained people to install these things, which means long waits and higher prices. Second, that supply chain weakness for key parts is a constant risk. And third, there are new environmental rules coming in that are forcing manufacturers to scramble and re-engineer their products to use new, cleaner refrigerants. It's a lot to deal with all at once. So, that leaves us right here with this one massive question. The tech works, the need is undeniable, and the ambition is off the charts. But with a shaky market, real cost issues for regular people, and some serious logistical headaches, the EU's huge bet on the heat pump is facing a very real cold snap. And whether it can power through and weather this storm, well, that's what we're all waiting to see.